Bob Tulipan has more than 30 years' experience in the entertainment industry and has represented acts such as Public Image Limited and the Psychedelic Furs, promoted concerts featuring The Police, Judas Priest, Patti Smith, Talking Heads, plus rock concert events for the Moscow Film Festival and the 1998 G8 Summit meeting in Denver. In the 80s, he founded the Traffic Control Group, one of the most successful global logistics firms with an A-list of clients. After selling TCG, he put pen to paper and has 2 books in the pipeline, and is also one of the major forces behind Bang Networks. First of all, Bob, great to see you.
Nice to see you again, Mike. Thanks.
30 years just went like that.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
And you look so young.
You wake up one day, you know.
It's nice that you wake up.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
30 years though. Music, entertainment. Did you ever think you'd get to this stage?
If you enjoy what you do, time flies by.
Mm-hmm.
There's never that doldrum. There was never that basic, I hate my job, I hate my boss, I hate getting up every day. Instead, sometimes your hours are longer. They're not 9 to 5 hours. The hours might be 9 till 4 in the morning, but you're inspired by what you're doing. You have your craziness, but you're inspired. So time goes by quickly.
So why, I suppose, music, entertainment?
I always had a certain affinity towards it. I always, maybe it's left side, right side brain. I don't know. I was exposed to a lot of culture and art as a kid, which helped, I think. And but it was always that attraction. I wanted to be a cowboy though when I was about 7 or 8. I mean, I remember forcing my parents.
You wanted to be a cowboy.
I wanted to be a cowboy. I wanted to be Roy Rogers. I mean, it's a thing. It's true.
So do you like cowboy music?
I do actually. I like and rockabilly music and some of it. But I like all kinds of music.
Yep. What's your favorite artist?
Don't have one. I have a lot. There are so many different kinds. I mean, I love so many classic songs that we all like and contemporary songs. I love a lot of world music. I like actual classical music. I like what music does for you and where it takes you and what it makes you think about. I like how it inspires you, so I can't limit it. I do have a certain affinity though to, it's strange to say, to country music as well as to progressive music and to classic American blues and that type of thing.
Yeah.
I just don't like...
With raw soul?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
You could have been a singer. Before talking off camera, you said you wanted to be a singer. You moved to basically managing and promoting. But if you were a singer, what sort of singer would you have been? Would you have been country? Would you have been rock, jazz, blues?
It would have been, I think, somewhere between the jazzy side of white boy blues. I think along that line, but probably closer because of my age group. Probably closer to a Tom Jonesy type of thing.
Tom Jones?
Yeah, because I did grow up at that period of the 60s and then at the end of the 60s. I'm caught.
Unusual.
Yeah, kind of that. But then also I really love, for example, I don't know if you ever hear the Chieftains did an album with Mick Jagger and Van Morrison, a bunch of these different people, and songs like, what was it? Long Black Veil, So there are certain things there that come out of traditional that I love. So those are the songs I sing in the shower. So
do you have a good voice?
I have good tone, but I can't keep time. So, but it's not bad. I used to be in a lot of plays when I was younger, and studied acting in school. Did some acting there, and did a couple of little professional plays, and I got to sing. I could, but
you mentioned progressive music. I mean, Public Image, you had Psychedelic Furs, My Sex from Australia, just to name a few. They were very much on the cutting edge, and now they don't seem so cutting because the whole industry changed.
Right.
Why did it change?
A lot of things. Technology's changed. I mean, if you remember My Sex, for example,
they were keyboard and synthesizer.
Yeah, but they were very big on the video. It was that whole initial, the early days of what was it, like 79, 80, somewhere around there, and video was one of their selling tools, and it was all about using keyboard technology and the image, and I think it was computer games was the song. So they were right there on that cutting edge.
Yeah.
With Public Image, we had two companies. We had PEP, Public Enterprise Productions, and then we had MIC, MIC, which was Micro Image Corporation, and a Multi-Image Corporation, excuse me. And it was all about dealing with technology, dealing with computers, understanding. These guys were ahead of the curve, about really understanding where things were going to go. I remember we had one of these little Sinclair. Do you remember Sinclair? I think he's maybe a lord now, from the UK. He's an inventor.
Yes.
And he had done a laptop that was little more than a calculator, but a bit more. But it was like the first little tiny laptop. It was only about as big as this paper.
Yep.
But it weighed probably about 10 pounds. But we had one of them on the road in 1981. I mean, it was amazing.
Cutting edge technology.
Yeah, cutting edge technology. And then there was from Australia, your homeland, there was an amazing synthesizer, the Fairlight. That we were trying to get to Fairlight, and there was a studio in California. I remember Village Recorders. A friend of mine was the rep for them, and I remember taking Keith Levine from Public Image, who was like John's real creative partner, to meet with the guy who owned the studio, Dick LaPalme, and we're trying to get this Fairlight. It was about $40,000 in 1981 or two money. It was, say $150,000 today. And we were trying to get one of these on spec to use or have them endorse us, because it was this real computer processor music generating thing. And I think it was like, again, artists sometimes reach, and there's some artists are keyed into technology. They're keyed into Peter Gabriel, totally keyed into technology. I mean, there's so many artists, or even coming out of video, you had Adam Curry, who was one of the first MTV VJs. He went and started this whole internet thing, took a company public, On-Ramp, I think it was called. And so there's a lot, where it links in. I'm learning more and more myself. I'm really learning more and more. Before I was a bit of a Luddite, and I was I had a little bit of an elitist attitude of like, why do I need to operate the technology myself? I'll have people do it for me. But you understand that you have to deal with technology today, and or otherwise it would be like being illiterate. It's gone farther down the road in the fact that we're using computers and the internet and all the related factors that come out of the computer and technology to actually sell our music and to sell our lifestyle. So it's interesting.
You've had some big concerts under your belt. What makes a great concert? I mean, because you've been involved in so many. Is it the audience, or is it the act, or is it a combination of both?
It is a combination of both. I mean, what you have to do first of all is the conditions and the overall structure has to be right for the act, so they're comfortable. And they're comfortable. They have what they need, and they can do the most of it. Unless you have some veteran acts that are just, they can make anything wonderful, and it doesn't matter, because sometimes out of problems, you achieve another level of greatness because you're going somewhere else. But when you have it click, that you have an audience, oftentimes you go to a place and you have an audience that's uninvolved. Or when bands would showcase, for example, in clubs, you would have, say, the first 10 rows, which is all you see from stage, would be industry people who weren't really paying attention. They were there, or cold suits or whatever. But the difference is when it all gets fired right away. That's when it works, And I think when the band members don't take themselves too seriously, also, because I learned a long time ago from the old jazz players that you never make a mistake, you just played it differently. and what you see in front of the curtain and what you see behind, obviously there's some blatant mistakes you don't get over, but a lot of times they never played anything the same way twice,
Even with the lyrics on stage.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they forget them.
Exactly. Well, I've seen bands go to war after a show because somebody, dropped a little cue somewhere or did something, that was minuscule that nobody knew. And these guys would, get into physical battles,
But there are artists around that want that perfection.
Sure.
And then they have the perfection, and you lose that spontaneity, that live feel, don't you?
Exactly. It all has to be, but everyone has, you never know. It's like, why do some painters do portraits and other ones are just going to do footprints? I mean, you never quite know what motivates that, where it comes from. That's the interesting thing about it, I think.
Traffic Control Group, absolutely huge. London, New York.
We had a little Moscow thing for a while too.
Yeah. So why from the music industry into logistics?
See, I was never the corporate traditional promoter. I was never like the promoter that was specific, tied to a theater, venue or region. I would do events. My key really was trying to do interesting events, also representing international bands. We had to deal with lots of logistics for movement, for visas, for customs, for all around, for setting things up, for finding resources, whether it's technical resources, personnel, and everything. And I started doing it for my own groups and my own events. And then also the nature of the industry is such where at times you might be generating a lot of money from your projects, you might have other slow periods. And my dad would give me a word of advice when I was younger. He said, you should always find something to do in the middle, if ever that happens. And so I started, it was weird, it was CBS Records Group out of the UK, and we were doing a lot of work for them, and I was working here, we were doing work for the Columbia Records here in Epic, and met a guy at CBS UK who ran special projects, and all of a sudden he said, well, we could get the whole label's worth of stuff, maybe we should think about doing this a little more formal. He was my liaison. So we decided to set up the company, and we set it up jointly, in the U.S. and U.K., and having CBS at the time, they were the gold standard in the record labels. So then we, right away, it became a thing. And we were able to do events for them, we were able to do little mini tours for the new artists, and helping make it happen. So it was facilitation, a lot of it.
Russia. Stop shaking so much. First of all, you hear stories that they were a crazy bunch of people in those days. Were they?
Yeah. It was interesting though.
Was it scary?
There were
moments.
There were moments that were
vodka
interesting.
fixes that up.
A lot of vodka, actually. And horse milk. They drink horse milk in certain territories.
Horse milk.
In some of the autonomous regions of Russia, they drink horse milk. So with the vodka, it's a chaser. So interesting place. Great spirit, great creativity. You learn certain values they have are wonderful. You also learn about certain other things that aren't quite as wonderful.
So after TCG, though, some of your great loves, the music industry and Russia, parts of of two books.
Right. Exactly.
Music.
Right.
And the other one has great ties.
Yep.
Into the violent side of Russia too.
In the fiction novel, trust me, I deal with elements of the Russian mafia as well as I deal with white slavery. Someone was kidnapped, but I also deal with the Chinese triads and New Zealand. I have someone actually. You're close to New Zealand, only one country away, kind of divided by what? Everybody thinks it's next door, like New Zealand's New Jersey, right?
It's still about 3 hours.
4 hours. No, I know.
Yeah.
Well, that's close, though.
It is close. Anyway, back to the book.
What I've done is all along in my whole life and through these amazing places I've been able to be and people I've been able to meet, I always use them in the background. I always said these are going to be part of the stories I'm going to be able to write. These things I'm going to be able to take from this. This is a scene, that I'm going to somehow transpose. These characters, I'm going to make composites of these people. This line this person said, part of that whole process. But that's what an artist does. You draw from all these things, as you know. You just take it all. And so what happened? This thing I wrote, but I want to do a kind of fact-based fiction where you also tie into what's going on in the world and types of things. If it happens that it all goes together, it makes it interesting for people to read. The global stage is what I'm about, and I like the fact how all of these things link, and we could just show the ties. So there's bits of weapons and trading, there's bits, but I've seen these characters. I've dealt with these characters, and what I look to do in writing is to be able to have a moral. There's strength. My whole thing is about trust and honor, between friends, lovers, and adversaries. You know, and the adversaries is just as important. There are some bad guys in this one book that you think are the worst bad guys, but they have certain, and two rivals, they have certain bond and a code of honor they have between them. Their underlings might not, and things go on, but they do. And it's just seeing how these things, and these are values that are important to me.
And a lot of fun.
A real lot of fun, because I was able to afford to do the research. But what's so strange is it wasn't the first book I thought I was going to write. There was a story that I was going to write about rock and roll and politics. And during the Carter administration, I got hired by the DNC to produce concerts, this back in 1980, when I was still a baby, to produce concerts, fundraisers for President Carter's re-election. Now we see it more and more, how important pop stars are to the process, and how our candidates are pop stars a lot of times. Bono might wind up being the head of, who knows, you know, they might make him a UN ambassador. I mean, these are the potentials.
But also a great ambassador.
Well, in a lot of ways, there's stuff they bring with them, some of these people. There's some great concepts there in dealing with this whole celebrity thing. So this is where it came from for me.
And also a book on the music industry. You want to put a lot back into it.
It's interesting, as this was one that was generated by another book. I had taken a book on the Kremlin. A friend of mine was the chief advisor to President Yeltsin and then President Putin, and he also became... he's an interesting character, this guy, Sergei Yastrazhemsky. He's one of the new Russians, in a sense. Very robust man and interesting guy. You've seen him on TV a million times. And he did a book that was photographs from his point of view, from his access to the Kremlin. And through a rock and roll connection, as weird as it is, I got to the chairman of Barnes & Noble, who then put me with the chairman of his publishing division, of his actual imprint. They're the stores and distributors now. And began, they wanted to do this project, and then for some crazy unforeseen reasons with the Russians, the project kind of went another way, which maybe we'll do it later. But they, one of the senior editors spoke to me about, his real interest was having somebody do a book on the, how to break a band today, and a real granular type of approach to what it takes, for somebody that's starting a band to really do it. And so we had a few meetings about it, and I actually in the beginning wasn't that interested, because I'm kind of, in some ways a project. At first I didn't understand the real potential of the project as far as the importance of it, but more and more as I thought about it and as we had discussions, I realized I could do something, because I didn't want to just do another how-to book. And so I came up with a concept that I think was somewhat exciting, and it's very interactive, where I'll have, beyond the physical book, there'll be a whole interactive component to it. And what I'll do is pose questions. I'll go out and do lots of interviews. I'll provide boilerplates of contracts, a lot of general advice, and some anecdotes to make it interesting in that way. But I want to then pose questions to people trying to do it, and then go to experts I know in the field and get them to actually give responses and advice. So it's not just coming from me. I can then go to the head of a record company, or the person at MySpace Music, or some artist that's doing well on the internet, or another artist that's done well in traditional record labels, or a merchandiser, or all the way down the line, all the way across the board, or people that have made mistakes, people that have been successful, when to have a manager, when to have a business manager, when not to.
So you're utilizing again your experience.
Exactly.
And your new project, Bang.
It's a multi-platform network, combined network, television, internet, mobile. It's kind of the future of online entertainment and online stores.
And again, on the edge.
On the edge.
Just 3 more questions.
Please.
Up until now, in one word, how would you describe your life? In one word, up until now.
Interesting.
The next 20, 30, 40 years?
Hopefully more interesting. But one thing I want to do is, one thing I really, really want to do is be able to do positive things for for people. I found I've been able to be in a position that I have achieved to some extent that, and it's in the things I write and the things I work, and I really want to be able to set without preaching. I want to be able to just if I do things that people can take something from that's positive for them, that's beneficial.
And if everybody you've met the last 30, 40 years in the industry, and you were to meet them now for the first time, and they said, Bob Tulipan, in a word only, who are you?
That's interesting. See, now
Only one word.
I know, that's hard though. Let's see, I have a lot of friends. I used to be a chameleon and had people that knew me from a lot of different things. And traffic control changed that to an extent because it made me more substantive to them, you know? Substantive, whatever it was. But, so they wouldn't say chameleon anymore. They definitely wouldn't say loser. They would say, maybe the visa guy, maybe a fixer, maybe I'm the fixer, I don't know.
What would you say, though?
What would I say?
To them, as a description in one word, who you are.
Happy.
Bob, thanks very much.
Thank you. Pleasure.